Wynter. My name is Vernicca Wynter, and I am an entrepreneur. I am a principal, a mom, and I'm committed to creating a culture of love. So I'm so very excited to have you here and make sure that we're able to engage today in such a meaningful conversation that makes such a difference. And I look forward to your feedback and sharing all of this information with you. So at this time, we are going to take a moment for mindful breathing. I'm going to share the presentation because some of us are visual learners, so I want to make sure that everyone can see what I'm asking of you and that you can understand what I mean by soft belly breathing. So I'm going to share the visual with you. All right, so as we go into our mindful moment, as we inhale, we're going to have the air come all the way through our lungs and into our belly. And as we exhale, we will flatten our stomachs. So if everyone can take a moment to close your eyes or engage in a soft gaze. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Inhale and exhale. Focus all of your intention on your breathing as you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. If thoughts come, allow them to come, acknowledge them, and return your attention back to your breathing, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Drop your shoulders in through your nose and out through your mouth. Notice any tension in your body, your feet, your legs. Release the tension and focus your attention on your breath, in through your nose and out through your mouth. One more breath in and out. All right, I ask that you return your attention back to the present moment. As we engage in this conversation of creating a culture of love, I welcome you. You can return your attention back to the present moment. And let's get into the conversation of mindful leadership and what mindfulness is. So at the very core, one of the most important things that we can do as leaders is to make sure that we are self-aware, because it starts with us. And we need to make sure that we are aware of our own emotions. We're aware of how we are communicating with others. And when we are in various emotions, that we're aware of what that looks like for us. So simply put, the leader sets the emotional tone of an organization. When the leader is balanced emotionally and can be aware of their communication of their emotions, then it sets the stage for safe, healthy, interpersonal communication between individuals. It also allows us to focus on the culture that we've created within the organization. So when we don't actively create our own culture, we get to a space where we are allowing others to do that for us. And when we do that, sometimes it works well, and sometimes it does not. Sometimes the positive people in the organization set the culture and it's great. And other times it gets us to a space where we have relinquished that power And some of the naysayers create our culture. And that's when the work environment turns into a stressful, tense place where people are upset coming to work. No one wants to be there. And as leaders, we don't want to be in that space, much less work in a space where we're leading a team that operates that way. So mindfulness is all about being aware of our emotions, being aware of ourselves, and then how we are communicating that with others. So mindfulness is that awareness of self, awareness of your emotions, awareness of how you are showing up, and then taking that clarity in how you communicate with others. So today we're going to explore several ways that you can create a culture of love within any team or organization. It starts with self-awareness of emotion, a human connection, initiatives, feedback, and then we'll end with talking about your team vision. So I know some of us are scholars. We want to know, is this all about feeling good, or are you actually going to back it with some research? So I just wanted to provide what the research looks like for mindful leaders. And research indicates that mindful leaders regulate emotions. They focus on the present. They are empathetic with others. They consider different viewpoints and adopt new perspectives. They adapt to circumstances or transitions, and they become more responsive to others in the work environment. And when you do that, it creates job satisfaction, goal attainment, and overall performance increases. So I want you to take a moment and reflect on a time that you have worked with someone who was not a mindful leader. How did it feel to work for someone that maybe was moody, that was upset, that when they were upset or having a bad day, you felt it and you knew it? So take a moment in the chat and share, how did it feel to work with someone on your team or for a supervisor that felt that way? Terrible. Going to work became a chore. Thank you. Any other feedback? On edge? I feel like you're walking on eggshells. Absolutely. Uneasy. I think we've all worked for someone. So I want you to connect by going in the chat and letting us know, how did that feel? Never knowing what's right or wrong. Feeling like you were underappreciated. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? You put up an attitude for no reason. Okay. Anyone else have that someone that jumps out at them as the opposite of mindful leadership? Feels like you don't matter, emotionally drained. Absolutely. You're afraid to speak up. There's no safe space. Thank you. Defensive. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we know what it feels like to work for someone that way. And I'm confident that you're here because you want to make sure that you are not operating in that space, right? No one comes to work, well, I won't say no one, but you're here because you want to make sure that you are creating a culture of love on your team. And I appreciate you taking that valid step. So when it comes to emotions, I like to think of the leaders as the ones that set the tone, because we're the ones that, regardless of what's happening, it starts with us and it ends with us, and everyone feels how we feel, whether it's good or bad, right? So when we take the first step in this conversation, we're going to start with self-awareness. I like to call this an emotional check-in. And I think it's important as leaders that throughout the day, we take time to check in with ourselves. What emotions are we feeling? Every emotion is valid. And I tell people all the time, there's no such thing as a bad emotion. Sadness matters, happiness matters, positivity matters, but disappointment and frustration matter too. So because every emotion matters, it's important that we are checking with ourselves throughout the day to really acknowledge, what emotion are we feeling in that moment? And then the next step is, how does that manifest itself in our body? Maybe we have a headache. Maybe we get a tummy ache. Maybe we are usually in a positive mood, responsive to emails. We have nice pleasantries and happy emojis. And when we're not in a good space or we're having a rough day, we're very curt and we and we say no to everything. So part of that self-awareness is to know what you are feeling. How does it manifest in your body? And how do you change your output as a result of that communication? So when we talk about self-awareness, starting with the leader, it really is like the analogy of the airplane. You gotta check yourself first. And creating a culture of love starts with self-love and self-awareness, and making sure that you are taking time to emotionally check in, acknowledge what you are feeling, and then start to have ways that are healthy ways for you to move through and past those emotions. So it's like we have those people sometimes that you see them in the morning and they tell you, man, I'm so angry today. I'm so frustrated. And then you see them 5 more times throughout that day and that has not changed. And they say it every time they see you, versus you see someone one time, they say they're frustrated, they're upset, they're angry. You acknowledge that, and then they take the time to acknowledge those feelings and move past them. So whether you do soft belly breathing like we did at the beginning of this session, or whether you do music, or whether you meditate,
I finally get back.
you want to make sure that you are taking time to check on yourself and what your emotions are in any given moment so that you can then move past it. I'm going to ask to make sure that everyone is muted. If you're, when we're going to get to the Q&A at the end is when we'll unmute, but I just want to make sure we don't have any background sounds that could possibly be a distraction. So the human connection piece is the next layer of creating a culture of love. And I'll be honest, I think that as leaders, sometimes it's difficult because they always say people leave the leader, they don't always leave the organization. And we know that sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, there's a new career change, there's I'm moving out of town, but sometimes it is the leader. Sometimes it is the leader that is the reason why someone is not happy in the organization or why they are interested in a different experience. And that's where we just want to make sure that we are conscious of our impact as leaders on any team. And the first step is that leader vulnerability. I always believe in what Maya Angelou said when she says, people may forget what you said, people may forget what you did, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And I live and breathe that because I feel like it doesn't matter what you do, how you make someone feel makes all the difference. And so because of that, I think I'm very, very, very passionate about what we can do as leaders in how we make people feel around us. And so the first step is our own vulnerability. Years ago, I used to feel like the leader should always have everything together. No one should ever see you sweat. You should always be composed. Everything should be good. And no one should ever know kind of some wonderings that you might be having, or some past experience, or some anxiety that you might be experiencing. And throughout my journey through mindful leadership and my own development, I realized that that vulnerability is really where the power lies. Being open about what you're anxious about, what you are wondering about, and sharing those personal experiences with those that you work with in a professional setting for what could possibly apply to what you're dealing with or about to deal with makes a big difference. And I've realized that that transparency is very powerful. And not only does it create deepening relationships, but it also increases respect because people start to see you as a human and not a robot. And they start to know that, oh, you are feeling the same things I'm feeling. You are going through some of the same wonderings and anxiety that I might feel, and then working through those things together. So the first step is really the leader being transparent, being open, starting to share personal experiences, personal feelings about things, so that they can be open and honest and connect with others that might be feeling that way. The next step is valuing stories. Every single person has a story. We all have a journey that we have been on. And I think it's important as leaders that we not only share our own story, but we empower others to share their stories. And we make sure that we create a space that values the individual paths that people have taken, because in those experiences, that's how we can start to build inclusion. That's how we start to really value diversity. is empowering people to be open about their journey, be open about their story. And in doing so, you start to really connect. People start to realize that we have some differences, but we have some similarities. We've walked some of the same experiences, and that unifies the team. It builds respect amongst the team. And then that permeates into the culture, where individual journeys start to create a common reality for each and every individual on the team. And there's someone that they know has felt those feelings or has walked that path at one point. And that's really where the culture starts to connect and really create an environment of inclusion for everyone on the team. The next has to do with initiatives. So culture doesn't create itself, and it's up to the leader to be very intentional on putting initiatives in place that facilitate the creation of that culture that you want to create. I'm just going to kind of go through a couple ideas with you. One is wellness checks amongst your team. Maybe that looks like a handwritten note asking someone how they're doing. Maybe that's an email. Maybe that's a phone call. However you feel comfortable visiting someone in their space to check on how they're doing. We always say we don't have enough time to do that with our friends or with our family. It's important that we create time to do that with the people that we work with, so that they know that we care, we value how they're feeling in any given moment, and we can try to support them through that. Handwritten notes. I must have an old soul. I love pen and paper. I know it can be overwhelming, especially if you have a large team that's over 100 people. It gets difficult. And so handwritten notes really, really, really are a personal approach that leaders can take. Sometimes it's to recognize special events, a birthday or a baby. Sometimes it's appreciation, just letting them know that you appreciate something that they've done. Sometimes it's a performance highlight. And in other times, it could be through challenging times. Maybe you know that something's going on personally or professionally, and you just want to give a handwritten note to wish them well. And so handwritten notes, I think, are another initiative that you can do as leaders that connect and empower. And then mindful activities. We did one at the beginning of this meeting, but if you want to be a mindful leader, you have to model mindfulness so people know that it's safe. They don't have to be perfect, but that it matters. And so those mindful activities make a big difference. And I know it's helped me tremendously. So if it helps me, then I want to pass that on to others. So modeling those mindful activities, whether it's in meetings or in other platforms, I think is important. And then designating time for team mindful activities. Maybe it's dedicating a meeting to meditation, dedicating a meeting to yoga, dedicating a meeting to breathing exercises. Because if we can have the people around us have the tools to control their own emotions, then they're able to permeate that throughout the environment, pass that down to our children, pass that down to our students, and really make an impact. And then lastly is team building events. Whether you plan them yourself or you put together a team of people, we know that team building events, whether they're in the building and you play games or whether they're outside of the building, that you are creating opportunities for people to connect, to have fun, to laugh, to share stories. And those memories fill love tanks so that when you have to make those withdrawals, the tank is not empty. So those are just some of the initiatives that I encourage you to have in place as you're on your journey of creating a culture of love. And next, feedback. So a lot of times as leaders, we always hear, give feedback, make sure you're telling people how they're doing, and that is absolutely one of the critical pieces of leadership, is providing feedback, letting people know what they're doing well, what they need to work on. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. I think the most important feedback that we can get is to ourselves as a leader. And so I like to have multiple ways that we are garnering feedback. As a teacher, I used to survey my students every year throughout the year. What am I doing well? What can I do better? How, what can I work on? I did that as an assistant principal. I do that as a principal. What am I doing well? What do I need to work on? I do that with my children. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I ask them periodically, how am I doing as a mom? What am I doing well? What can I do a little bit better? How can I improve? I do that with my husband. I think it's important that in relationships, we're just aware that feedback is crucial, and feedback can be very helpful in our growth. And so if we create opportunities for feedback and create a safe space, then we're able to receive information that will guide our growth and guide our journeys. So part of creating a supportive work culture is providing opportunities for feedback. And I like to say, One way to do that is anonymous. I think anonymous surveys are great. We know some people have Twitter fingers and they will put something in a survey that they would never say to your face, but because it's anonymous, they can be very, very honest. And so I think it's important that we take time sometimes to do an anonymous survey so that we give people that freedom to say how they're really feeling without wondering if they can trust that it's not going to be punitive, that there's nothing that's going to come back and get them for being open and honest. And the next part of feedback is not only the anonymous side, but it's also discussion feedback. I think it's important that you have face-to-face conversations to be able to say, what's going well? What do we need to work on? And have that dialogue, because sometimes the discussion can be powerful within itself. And sometimes we can do surveys and ask questions and then nothing ever comes of it. So I'm going to say the second half of this feedback conversation is what you do with the feedback. It's great to ask for feedback, but if you don't do anything after that, then you might as well have not gotten the feedback. When it comes to feedback, the next half of that step is either putting into place some of the ideas that have been put forth and asking that person that put that idea forth, hey, do you want to lead it? Will you at least be on the committee for it? Will you give us a little more details as to what you were thinking, so that if it's feasible and there's no issue, it's not going to land you anywhere crazy, put it into place, right? Because it's an idea, it's valid, it can be done. But the flip side of that is, if it's something that is not something that can be done, if it's not realistic, it's important that you take that extra step to explain that. Take that step to explain from a global perspective as an organization, these are the ripple effects that would happen if we tried to do that idea. And this is why we're not going to be able to do that idea. And sometimes people value that step because whether it's in the group when you're discussing it, sometimes you can just share it right then and there. Hey guys, this is not going down and this is why. Because they might not be aware of some of the operational things behind it. And so if we can give that glimpse into some of the ripple effects and why that idea can't be put into place, then they value that and they can walk away saying, okay, that makes sense. All right. Or sometimes it just eliminates them walking away saying, no one ever listened to what I said anyway. And I don't know why they even asked, So sometimes it's important that you take that step to say why, especially if it's in a discussion format, why something might not be the best idea to put into place. And then the other side of feedback is understanding that sometimes feedback is just that. You'll never make 100% of people happy. And as much as I love 100%, I want everyone to feel like I support them, I love them, I create a wonderful work environment. If there's a handful here and there that I feel like, nope, I don't feel that, I don't agree with you at all, I don't think you're doing that, then I want to know, how can I? How can I improve in that area? But you also have to understand as leaders that some feedback is just feedback. You won't be able to change everyone and you won't be able to change everything. And so it's important that you walk away from some feedback and leave it there, because if you know that you've done everything you possibly could, don't take it personal, accept that which you can change that which you can, and accept the rest along the way. And know that feedback is all about growth. So accept the things that you would like to include in your journey. The last step is a shared vision. A shared vision can make a big difference on the team. And so when we talk about a team vision, it's important that everyone is at the table. Some organizations have a set vision. There's no changing it. It has been that, it is that, it will not change. So for those individuals that have a vision that cannot be changed, then I always say that's where a theme comes in. Maybe you can create a theme. Maybe you can create a motto. Maybe you can add a mission statement. That in itself will be able to pivot in the direction that the team needs to go and the new place that you want to take the organization. But if you're in a position where you can change the vision, have everyone at the table, whether they're staff, whether it's the leadership team, students, community members, parents, have people that are impacted by your decisions at the table to give input. Where do they see it, the organization, in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? Where do they want to see it? And then from that open feedback, you're able to put together a smaller group to really fine tune it, streamline it, and really get to where you think that vision statement can go. But the power of doing it as a team is that you have more buy-in. Multiple individuals feel like they can be held accountable because they were a part of creating it. And it's no longer your vision as the organization leader, it's our vision. Didn't you say you wanted us to have a positive environment? Didn't you say that you wanted us to discover new things? Didn't you say you wanted us to have diversity and embrace inclusion? Then that needs to be part of what our vision is. That needs to be a part of where we're going and what we're all committing to. So involving everyone in that step really makes a difference in terms of everyone embracing what the vision is and where the organization is going. So while there's a lot involved in creating a workplace of love, truly mindfulness and emotional awareness is at the core of creating a space committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion of every single person as a vital part of the organization. And now that you have a few key pieces that you can implement today to not only show love, but also be loved. And that's what creates a culture of love. So with that being said, I ask that you take a moment now in the chat to reflect on some of the things that you heard today. And if you can just share what resonated with you the most. What resonated with you the most? If you can share that in the chat. And then I'm going to open the floor up for questions. Okay, bringing all stakeholders together. Getting feedback from colleagues in all relationships. Very nice. Feel the love in any work environment. Very true. Self-awareness. Okay. Encouraging mindfulness with coworkers, not only just students. All right. Thank you. Absolutely. Taking time to explain why some feedback and ideas cannot happen. All right. So I want to open up the floor at this point for anyone that has questions or comments to be able to take the floor, unmute yourself. And ask any questions or comments that you might have. It's great if you can turn your cameras on, then I feel like we're not like in class where the students prefer to turn their cameras on and you're talking to yourself. If you can, absolutely, I'd love to see your beautiful faces. If not, I totally understand, I get it. But if anyone has any questions or takeaways that you would like to share. You should be able to unmute yourself. Is anyone that's trying to, if you can tell me in the chat if you're having any issues. You're there. Okay, perfect. All right, so if we can start with Deneen and then Catherine Palmer. Feel free to unmute your, we can hear you, Deneen.
Oh, okay. I have a quick question. So, can we have access to your PowerPoint? Because I was trying to write down some things and I missed some of the things. If not, that's fine. Um, but one thing that I thought that you said was very important when you say bring all people to the all stakeholding people to the I guess to the meeting or to the decision or however you're making things. Um, how do you how do you engage someone who is not trying to practice mindfulness and but they're one of the stakeholders, because you're trying to get everybody on that one accord, um and you know that they're a stakeholder, because I do believe in having varying voices. I don't want to have everybody who's just like me or thinks just like me, but I found that when I've attempted that on occasion, um it's always that person that it makes it difficult to to have that functioning body where you're coming for a good solution? Because I guess maybe they have an ulterior motive. How do you navigate when you're dealing with some, because being that you're a principal, I'm sure you do that. How do you navigate I'm going to just give the word, the negative Nancy's or the pessimist Peter? How do you
So
navigate that?
there's always going to be pessimist Peters and negative Nancy's. No one will ever be able to please everyone. So I always say when it comes to things like that, part of mindful leadership is self-awareness, right? Control what you can control. So if you create opportunities for people to be involved, create opportunities for people to share their perspective, if they are not receptive, you can't make them. Mindfulness is not one of those things that you can force someone, please stop being, angry and calm your emotions down and be balanced. You can't force it. But if you create opportunities where it's optional if you want to come and learn meditation, it's optional if you want to come and do some soft belly breathing, or if you model it at the beginning of a meeting. I can't force you. I notice you're not breathing. Jennifer, start breathing. You can't force you, but if I provide an opportunity, then those naysayers sometimes will start to understand where it's coming from, what your intent is, and be more open. And then if not, then you know that there's other stakeholders that might be. So you open it up so that whoever is interested, whoever wants to be a part of that, has the opportunity to, because all you can worry about is what's within your control. So if as a leader, you create those opportunities for them, then it's up to them if they're open to it. And sometimes people aren't ready, and that's okay. Every emotion is valid. But if they are ready, then you've created a space for them to be able to be a part of that conversation or learn that skill. Thank you so much, Ms. Brown.
My name's Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
How are you?
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for your presentation today. It really, really resonated with me on multiple levels. I'm at Addicks Middle School, and we're in the beginning stages of a search for a new leader. Mr. Evans is leaving us, so as a lot of people know in the district. So a lot of what I heard today is going to be part of the conversation. But I loved what you shared in reference to not only accepting the feedback, but also either acting on it or explaining why you can't act on it. And that's been a key part of me as a developing leader. And even when I've moved forward something and someone told me, hey, you can move forward with this, and then they get told by their higher ups, no, you can't.
Right.
And I've had to turn the bus around and bring it back to the depot, so to speak, in order to reevaluate what we're doing. And that absolute open communication is so important when doing our equity work and creating that happy school environment, because, and I can only speak for school, but if you don't have that harmonious environment, for me, doing the equity work and having those courageous conversations, it's not going to happen. Because one of the biggest things that I've had to struggle with colleagues is that you have to walk away with those conversations understanding there may be no resolution. You're not, as you stated, going to be able to change somebody else. You can only hope that you plant the seed for them to begin to look at what their line of thinking is. And how they can adjust themselves. But it's so important to create that happy environment in order to have those conversations, because if you don't, I'm the goofball at work. And if you don't love the people you work with, if you're not taking it to be, making it a fun place to be, you're there way too many hours.
Right.
You're there way
I always say we spend more time together here than we do with our own families at home. So we better act like a family now. Absolutely. Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it is a balance, because every time someone has an idea, or every time someone shares a new concept or a suggestion or feedback, everyone doesn't get the full explanation of the why it can't be done, right? Because there's a balance as a leader between explaining yourself and making a decision sometimes because it's the best decision, right? So there's a time and a space for it. So when I talk about that, taking that extra step to explain the why, sometimes it is in that set aside feedback conversation where you have the whole group, in front of you. What are your ideas? What do you like, not like? so that in that moment, you can say, this is why we can't do this. We can try that. We can't do this. But on the daily, you don't have that opportunity. On the daily, you make a decision as a leader, knowing that you made the best decision. But if you know that someone suggested it or brought it to the forefront and you're not going to be able to do it, that's where you sometimes welcome them, that if you have an idea put forth that you don't see come to fruition, sometimes your feelings are hurt. You know, I had a conversation this week of someone that was upset with me because they said, I thought that you just didn't want that idea. And I said, no, I told you this. I told you were just great at this. I didn't realize that you were taking that to mean that you wouldn't be good at something else, but you're amazing at this. And so creating a space where you also welcome those kinds of conversations where people can share, hey, I had this idea, but I haven't seen it. Are we going to do it? Are we not going to do it? What's going on? And then you can then have those conversations. But every decision is not going to be with an explanation, because you're the leader. You make those decisions because of what's best, but you have to create an environment where if someone is in their feelings, you try to tell them, come so we can talk about it. So I can share that why it might be bothering you if you don't see one of your ideas come to the forefront. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. Any other questions, comments, or takeaways that you would like to share? We have a few minutes left. I did place 2 questions in the app as a poll. Of course, after everything I just said, I have to know what I can do better, right? So one of the questions is asking you to tell me, how could I have possibly improved this experience for you, either in the information and the delivery, anything that I could have done better? And then the other question is, what strategy did you find most impactful? So if you just take a moment to be able to answer that poll, it's in your app. If you go to questions from this session, those 2 questions are there. I would really appreciate it. Or you can just put it in the chat. You can put it in the chat if that's your safe space. But I just want to know how you feel receiving the information and if there's anything that resonated with you. So in our last few minutes, is there any other individual that has a question, a comment, or something that you intend to walk away with from this session? You are committed. You're not just going to say it, you're going to write it down, you're going to do it. What's that thing? Or just what resonated most with you? Feel free to unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Can I present this to other leaders? That's what I'm doing right now. All of you are leaders. All of you work with other people, right? So again, mindful leadership starts with you. So if you create that culture, whether it's with your students, whether it's with your staff, if you're at the district office, that permeates the culture. So absolutely, that's why I wanted to come and share and hope that it was impactful. And that's why I'm interested to see your feedback. Because I just think that that's really at the core of what we do. What are the questions? First question, how can we improve this experience for you? Rate your experience of what this session was. Was it helpful? Was it not? And how can it be improved? What takeaways do you have that you're going to walk away committed to adding to your toolbox of self-awareness, of mindfulness, and of mindful leadership? So with that being said, it is 2:40. I believe in honoring time. So feel free to put anything you'd like in the chat in terms of any feedback. And if you can, also take the time to answer those questions in the poll. I'm going to check and make sure that those questions posted that I typed before the session, to make sure that you could see them after the session. And again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for choosing to be on this journey with me. You are a part of my story now, and I value that you have made the decision to give me 40 minutes of your time. I appreciate it. I appreciate you for being a part of my story and a part of my life and my journey in mindful leadership and mindfulness. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to engaging with you again in the future. Thank you so much. I wish all of you well. I hope you have a lot of learning from this session and all of the amazing sessions that are part of this conference. And I appreciate you. Make it a great day, guys.